In this session, what I want to discuss is issues pertaining to the various amendments that have been made to the labor laws in Malawi. We all know that we have a number of labor laws that are there. We have the Employment Act, the Labor Relations Act, we have the Pension Act, we have the Gender Equality Act, the Occupational Safety and Health Welfare Act, the Workers' Compensation, HIV/AIDS Management Act, the Disabilities Act, HIV/AIDS Management Act. Yeah, because all these labor laws, or in short, all these laws are in one way or another related to issues of labor. I'll give an example: issues of HIV/AIDS. I think the act is proposing interventions that employers can do in the course of their employment, or in the course of carrying out their activities within the organization, and how can they take care of people who are HIV positive within the organization, or how can they recruit or maybe avoid discrimination of people with the HIV/AIDS. And also at the same time, there is also an issue to do with the Gender Equality Act. It's also a labor issue, because issues of gender, they also tend to affect the workplace in terms of recruitments, trainings, promotions. How do you balance issues of gender for senior positions, for example, amongst other things? So all these issues, they tend to affect issues of labor in one way or another. Yeah, they affect the employees, they affect the employers, because if you mismanage, you find that the employees are like, why are you mismanaging this, yet the law, or why are you doing these things in this way, yet the law is talking about a different issue. So what we need to appreciate is that we have these labor laws which are there, but in there where all these labor laws, I think, were done around in the 90s, and some around 2000, and also we have some which came in around 2016, 2017, 2007, amongst other years. But there have also been some amendments to these labor laws. I'll give an example. The Pension Act, despite being into effect in 2011, but was amended and came into being in 2022. So in 2022, we had a new act altogether, replacing the one that was there in 2011. But also we had an amendment of the Employment Act. Employment Act was first made in the year 2000. So we have had two amendments in 2010, but also at the same time in 2021. And also we have the Labor Relations Act that was amended in 2021. So I want to appreciate in this session, what I want to appreciate is to say what are some of the changes that were made in these laws, and why were they changed, and also just to appreciate what is the effect of such kind of changes on the employees, and how maybe employees have to be managed within the organization. So what we need to appreciate is that the execution of the laws is very important than the making of them, because what we are trying to say is, as much as we have these labor laws, but what we need to appreciate is the execution. Yeah, the labor laws were developed. It's not a very complex issue. These things are done by lawyers and all that, yeah, but we come up with a law. But what is problematic now is how to implement such kind of laws when you have them in place. So people tend to have different understandings of how the laws applies to them, and how they, or even they choose what sections to apply, or and which sections shouldn't apply. So that's why I'm saying the execution is more important, but also at the same time is so complex than the making of such kind of laws. At the same time, also, I think the laws are made to ensure that those who are strong to prevent them from uh, stamping their authority on those people who don't have the power. So it also brings in sanity, so that others shouldn't be victimized in one way or another. So these are some of the important things that we need to be able to appreciate when we talk about these labor laws, and also these laws. I think what we need to appreciate is that I've also discussed them in the book, A Guide to Human Resource Management Practice in Malawi, and also I've tried to explain all the amendments, the labor laws themselves, all these labor laws. I've tried to explain them in that book, but also at the same time the amendments to the such kind of amendment. I've also discussed the amendments that have been made in the book. So I think that's what we need to appreciate. And in terms of the uh, Employment Act, for example, thinking there's a mention of payment of benefits. They have to be done within 7 days. Yeah. So this is one of the amendments that was made to the Employment Act under Section 53. Um, and the most important thing that was made as an amendment there is to say there was a move of pension as a benefit, or to include issues of, or to exclude issues of pension, because now this was taken not in a specific act of parliament, the amendment of the bringing in of the Pension Act. So pension was supposed to be handled separately, or is supposed to be handled separately by a specific act of parliament. And also at the same time, there's also an issue of severance pay, to say there was an amendment to the severance pay. This is the amendment that happened in 2010 after the coming in of the Pension Act, to say Section 35 of the Employment Act was amended to ensure that severance pay only applies to circumstances where maybe there is redundancy or retrenchment, or after a court has determined the need for payment of the severance pay. But otherwise, it doesn't apply to long service employees, for example. Yeah, so there was that amendment that happened. But I think in that amendment, it was agreed to say, or what was due to the employees prior to the coming in of the Pension Act in 2010, it has to be calculated and be, or the severance that are accumulated up to 2010 have to be calculated and be submitted to the insurance companies. For those companies which are already on pension, thank you. As you know, before 2010, pension was not mandatory in Malawi. So some people could choose whether to be on pension or not to be on pension. But from 2010, it was now mandatory. So by having the Section 35, which was making a provision for severance pay, the employers were like paying double, both the severance and the pension. So they said no, the severance is no longer mandatory and is only applicable under special circumstances like redundancy and also retrenchments, or even when the court has determined, compared to the first instance where by payment of severance was mandatory under Section 35. So this is one of the important amendments that happened. And also at the same time, there was a mention of the gratuity, to say that this has to be paid to those people who are exempted from the pension. Yeah. So, but also at the same time, for an employee who has less than 5 employees, should be able to place his or her employees on gratuity. So there's also a mention to saying, thinking for gratuity, but also could be based on contractual gratuity, to say can also be paid as a contractual gratuity, and this one has to be based on the last salary. So this is amendment that happened in 2010, to say the gratuity has to be based on the last salary the employee is earning. So like if you started a job, let's say in 17, for example, and you joined at 100,000 wages as a salary, then now you are in 2024, maybe your salary is now 250. So it means for them to calculate the gratuity, they will have to base on the 2024 salary, which is the 250, and not the 100 that was there in 2017. So they will calculate the salary times the number of months that you have worked times 5%, because the gratuity is 5% that is provided by law. But if an employer is providing more than 5%, that's okay, because the law just provides the minimum. So anything above the minimum is allowed by law. Yeah, so that's how it should be calculated to ensure that um, the employees are getting the gratuity, and this gratuity has to be paid um, when one has worked for 3 or more months within the workplace. So you look at employees like housemaids, guards at the house, because maybe the employees are few there. Yeah, so that's why maybe they are paid the gratuity. Yeah, so the logic is to say, yeah, I think to say house helpers could be paid the gratuity. Yeah, and the surveillance after the change in the law, the surveillance also schedule was changed to say, for example, if one has worked not less than a year but is exceeding 5 years, he has to get 2 weeks wages for each completed year of service up to the 50th year. So if we have worked for um, not less than a year and also but not exceeding 5 years, then it implies, for example, 5 years, it means you will be paid 2 weeks wages for each completed year, year of service up to the end of the 50th year. Yeah, so that's what you need to appreciate. And also, when you have exceeded 5 years but not exceeding 10 years, it means you'll be paid 2 weeks wages for each completed year of service for the first 5 years, plus 3 weeks wages for each completed year of service from the 60th month. From the 60th year. Yeah, so including to the 10th year. Yeah, so from 60th to 10th, you'll be paid 3 weeks wages. So it implies, for example, if you are 10 years, it means the first years will be 2 weeks, but the other years will be at 3 weeks. Yeah, so if you are exceeding 10 years, it means the first 5 years you'll be paid 2 weeks, and the from the 60th year after the 10th year you'll be paid 3 weeks, and for the rest of the years you'll be paid now 4 weeks wages for each completed year of service. So that's what we need to appreciate. Now that's how the severance schedule was amended in 2010, because there's a schedule in the Employment Act, so it was amended in 2010. So that's how now the new schedule looks like. Yeah, now this is only payable where there is dismissal, unfair dismissal, and maybe the court has determined to say you have to be paid severance, or when there is retrenchment or redundancy. So this one, regardless whether you're already on pension, you're still supposed to pay, because this is a law that is there and it was amended in 2010. And also, I think in 2011, 2021, one of the changes also that came in, as I said, the amendment of the Employment Act came in 2010, and also in 2021, there was amendment of the paternity leave to say the male employees now are entitled to paternity leave of 2 weeks for every 3 years. So there was an insertion of Section 47A under Section 47 of the Employment Act to say there is now provision for paternity leave to paternity leave to male employees if they have got a child, for example. So, but this one, it has to be once every 3 years. And also there was an insertion of Section 46A, which was provision of so under Section 46, which is providing for maternity leave and all that, there was an amendment of that section to say there should be an additional section inserting the 46A, which is now providing for special conditions for lactating mothers, like the flexible working hours, lighter jobs, and or maybe shift spaces, allowing them not to be provided the shifts work In short, they are not supposed to work under shift. They're supposed to do lighter jobs. They should be provided with flexible working hours so that they can be able to go for lactating. When they are sick, they should be allowed to do that. When the child is sick, they should be allowed to go and take care of the child. Spaces for lactating mothers who should be provided. Breaks for breastfeeding, for example, they should also be provided. So this is it was taken is being taken care of under the section 46A. So if you read the Employment Act of 2020, the way it is, you might miss out these amendments to say you should also read them together with the amendments that happened in 2010 and also in 2021. So these are the key issues, the paternity leave one and also the flexible working hours for lactating mothers. And also at the same time, I think in 2021, that also came in around January, was the issue of minimum wage to say amendment of section 54, or powers that are given to the Ministry of Labor to determine minimum wages. This was gazetted in January 2021. This is the current minimum wage that we're using now to say as of January 2024, which we are in. Yeah, this is based on that 2021. So I know there's another the other activities that are happening to review the minimum wage, but as of now, as of January 2024, you find that these are the prevailing minimum wages. So they are providing 38,000 for domestic workers. This is the minimum wage for domestic workers who are working for 6 days a week, and the which is normally is around 1,461 and 54 tambara per day. But also they are providing for special salary for wages for truck drivers. So they are providing 140,000 wages per month for those people who are international truck drivers of 30 tons and above, and 100,000 wages for those who drive trucks of the same type of around 30 tons, but maybe they're driving within Malawi. So for those international 30 tons is 140. Those of 30 tons but locally 100,000, and there's now 60,000 wages for those travel driving vehicles or trucks which are less than 30 tons. Yeah, so this is one of the things that also had to come in. And also there was now a general minimum wage for the rest of the employees at 50,000 kwacha. Yeah, so this one is also which is around 1,923. So if you look at the complexity of this, is that I will give an example. A guard, would you regard a guard as a, let's say a guard who is working at the house at a residential, would you regard this one as a domestic worker, or you're not going to regard him as a domestic worker? So assuming you have categorized him as a domestic worker, and maybe are you supposed to pay him 50,000 wacha or 38,000? And how do you compare him? Maybe you've got a shop somewhere and you're also having a guard who are working the same shifts. So are you going to pay more the one that is working at a shop compared to the one who is working at home? So these are some of the things that we should be able to appreciate. We should be able to define who is a domestic worker. I hope a domestic worker is someone who is working at the workplace. I mean, at the home, for example, gardeners, maybe not popular trend, could be housemaids, gardeners, the cleaners, maybe could be the guards and all that. That's my understanding, but we can have different understanding of the same. So, but that's the dilemma that maybe we need to also has to be addressed in future. And also, I think there was also an amendment to the Labor Relations Act. In that regard, I think when employees they are absent from work due to a strike, for example, in 2021 there was an amendment to the Labor Relations Act to say then they have to be not to be paid after 3 days. When you're on strike and you have been on strike for more than 3 days, then it means the first 3 days you'll be on pay, but after the 3 days you'll not be on pay. But this is the amendment of section 46 of the Employment Act. Yeah, so but if you look closely to this particular section or to this kind of assuming the strike, for example, it is the employer who is in the wrong, and you find the employee is being punished for exercising his right not to work because he's trying to force the employer to pay him or maybe to act on his concerns, but now he's being punished for doing that. Yeah, we can have different schools of thought, but that's the problem that we have, that now if an employer has gone on a strike more than 3 days, then it means the subsequent days will not be paid, and that's a big problem that we have in the country. And yeah, because we have borrowed this concept from other countries whereby the unions are strong enough that they're able to pay their employees when they're on strike. Yeah, but in Malawi, I don't think we have unions who can be able to pay their employees when they're on strike. And also, I think there's also been an amendment of Section 65 to, I think now there is the issues to say at first the Industrial Relations Court was just concerned with the issues of um, uh, the law. I think it was just focusing on the issue of um, the law, yeah. But now it was amended to include issues of the cases can be heard based on issues of fact, law, and also jurisdiction. So it's now happening as a normal court, the way a normal court who look at the issues. At first, it was just based on facts, I think, yeah. So, but now they can entertain a case based on facts, based on law, but also even jurisdiction. And also at the same time, there is also an amendment by repealing section 66, 67, 68, and section 70 of the Labor Relations Act, whereby they have removed the issues of panel members to sit on an IRC, because that IRC first it was a panel for employer, panel for the employee, so it was more or less like discussing. The chairperson could lead and discuss, but nowadays they have removed the panel, so the chairperson now can make a determination. Lawyers can represent the employees on one side, and also a lawyer can represent the other person on the other side. But here the matter based on facts and also law. Yeah. So that's what has changed in the composition of the on the IRIC, and also at the same time. The concerned parties, I think there's also an amendment to section 65. The concerned parties can appeal to the High Court based on the law, facts, and also jurisdiction, just as I said earlier on, to say now the cases could be heard based on facts, law, and also jurisdiction. Yeah, so that's what a matter of. At first, I think it was just based on law and jurisdiction, but now they have added the facts to say the issues can also be heard based on facts. Apart from that, there's also been an amendment to the Pension Act. So the amendment in the Employment Act were done in 2010. There was also an amendment to the Employment Act in 2021, but also there's been an amendment to the Labor Relations Act in 2021, which I've just tried to explain. And also there's an amendment to the Pension Act. But in short, the Pension Act was rather an amendment. They have brought a new act altogether to say maybe what should be able to be used whenever employees working into an organization. So how should the people have to manage pension issues, for example. So this is well, one of the things that have changed in this. Whenever an employee can be able to withdraw, Section 18 of the Pension Act, it says a member may withdraw his part of the benefits or her account for the purposes of personal savings in a voluntary pension fund in accordance with the governing rules of that fund if the member has contributed to the fund for a period of not less than 5 years. So if your one has has contributed to the pension fund for more than 5 years, he can be able to withdraw his funds in a way. Yeah, so that's what also has changed to the law. And also at the same time, there's been an amendment to the issue for retirement age to say one can retire between the ages of 50 to 70 years. So it is providing one can be on pension short up to the age of 70. So, but you can start thinking of accessing your funds based on retirement when you are around 55. Yeah, but you can have it up to the age of 70. Yeah, and also at the same time, one of the things that has also been made to this amendments of the Pension Act is that you can be able to have additional contributions to the voluntary scheme. So an employer can provide more funds to the scheme for the employee. Yeah, but also sometimes even the employee can also make additional contributions to the pension scheme. Yeah, and also that the contributions have to be made within 14 days when the deduction has been made, and there are also administrative penalty if an employer has failed to remit the pensions within 14 days when they are due for submission. And also at the same time, there are certain cases whereby these pension funds could be paid out. One, when an employee has died. I think unless the nominated beneficiary, yeah, is a minor, yeah, so the minor couldn't be paid, but when, for example, an employee has died, the funds could be paid out. But also if an employee has left the country or has retired, or maybe it's 5 years or less to retirement. So if you have 5 years or less to the retirement age, you can be able to access your pension funds. Yeah, and also at the same time, there are certain cases whereby a member has retired or has 5 or less years retirement. One can be able to access about 50% of the accumulated benefits. So the access now has been moved from 40% to 50% to say you can be able to get your pension funds when you retire, when you from 55 years of age to a certain the retirement age. You can be able to have access of your retirement benefits whilst in employment. But even when you retire, you can have it at 50%. So you'll be able to get what has contributed to your account 50%, both the employer and the employee contribution together. So you get 50% of that. And also at the same time, I think it happens that maybe, for example, you should be able to indicate maybe people who are supposed to have access to your funds when you have died. For example, it could be your widower, or maybe your child, or maybe a close relation, or any other person who was financially dependent on you. So these are some of the circumstances, the people that can be paid the pension. This is as per Section 94 of the Pension Act. And one thing we should be able to appreciate is to say, for example, you might have someone who is a minor, for example. Yeah, so if you have got a minor amongst your dependents, their pension funds will not be processed, but will be paid to them when they have reached the age of 18. But they can be able to have the one who is a guardian can be able to have access to the funds through the trustees and be able to be paid maybe on a quarterly or monthly to support the child education, something like that. Yeah, so this is one of the things also that we need to be able to appreciate. And another thing also that we need to appreciate is that when no one has resigned, I think you can be able to access the employee contribution after 3 months. Yeah, so you're going to be able to access the has moved from 6 months to 3 months. So this is one area which has also changed in the law. So Section 88 was introduced just to ensure that you have this movement from 6 months to 3 months. So nowadays, when one has resigned from employment, will be able to access the funds, assuming that he has not secured another job. Yeah, but this one does not apply when an employer has died or retired on medical grounds, or has worked for 20 years, or has joined another employer. So that's what we need to appreciate. This access of the employee contributions is only when you have resigned and you are not employed anywhere. And also, the other thing that we need also to appreciate is that there's no need for the to force a member to revoke or amend a nomination. Yeah, the trustee has no powers to amend or revoke the nomination that has been made by the employee. So the employee has to make his or her own amendment to the nominations, or can he be able to revoke his previous nomination. So this one is only power of the member alone. But also what we need to appreciate is that this revocation of the nomination shouldn't be made under duress. So this is one of the important things that has to be made. Yeah. But also at the same time, the revocation under section 95 of the Pension Act should be made by a written notice to the trustee. But it should be done in a way that people cannot speculate to say maybe he was under duress or he was influenced in one way or another. So in short, what is supposed to be done, this kind of nomination should be made voluntarily. Yeah, should be made voluntarily. Yeah. And also, whenever maybe there's divorce, so it means whenever there's divorce, the nomination becomes invalid, because maybe he had just forgotten to remove that person, but it means the nomination becomes invalid, to say cannot be paid to someone who has divorced. But yeah, so that's what thing that also has to be appreciated. Yeah, or maybe he was not married but just married, then it implies that the previous nomination will be invalid. Yeah, so there are other processes that have to be followed, and to ensure that there is a new nomination, or maybe other people have to decide, or courts can decide who should be nominated. What I'm trying to say here is, it could be that there is a nomination that, or declaration of dependents who are going to get your benefits, but now an employee who had declared has died, then it may, or maybe there was divorce. Yeah, or there is divorce. Yeah, but maybe had indicated his or her spouse, and there is divorce. They're saying if their nomination is not amended, then it implies that that nomination becomes invalid. Or maybe he was not married, or she was not married, but now there was a nomination that was made, and yeah, now you need to ensure that that kind of a nomination which was made whilst the person was single becomes also invalid. So this is one of the important aspects. So whenever we have married, or when there is divorce, let's make sure that we amend our nominations. If we have amended after divorce, and the people see, we say, okay, but they had already included a spouse who we had divorced with, then that's okay. Yeah, that's the most important thing that we need to appreciate. Yeah. And these are some of the things which are very, very important for us to appreciate. Yeah, so these are some of the changes that have been made to the Employment Act, the Labor Relations Act, including the Pension Act. But what we think we should appreciate is that these laws are made for us to follow, and also to guide us on how we should be able to manage human resource processes in Malawi. So I hope you have enjoyed. If you are looking for trainings in specific labor laws, yeah, you can consult us as Change Consult Group. We can be able to come to you and be able to train you on these labor laws, so that you're able to understand and appreciate, and how some of the processes that you can be able to undertake within your organization to ensure that you are abiding by the laws. And also at the same time, these changes, these laws should be reflected in your terms and conditions of service and policies. So we can also support you to review or to develop better terms and conditions of service and also policies which are in line with the various labor laws or the national policies. We also know that we have got the national policy, like for example the HIV, we have got the national HIV/AIDS policy. For the gender, we have got the national gender policy. Among disabilities, we've got the national disability policy. So all these you might need to harmonize them within your terms and conditions of service and also various policies that you might have. So thank you so much for watching. I hope you'll be able to subscribe to this channel and also be able to ask other people or to refer other people so that they should also be able to join or subscribe to this channel. Enjoy